unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Augustmas, said nobody. Happy Thursday night. Welcome to The Last Show. I'm David Cooper, and here's what you're going to learn on tonight's program. It would seem some men don't notice sexism until it hits close to home, like when their partner experiences it. What am I talking about? Men can't seem to recognize when cruddy stuff happens to women. So, in 10 minutes' time, we will dive into new research that shows having a romantic partner might teach men a little empathy for women and do more than any lecture ever could. Then, later in the program, the public forum of the internet. Have you ever wanted to disappear completely from it? Halfway through the hour, we'll talk to somebody who did. He tried, and it was way harder and weirder than you'd think. From deleting hundreds of thousands of tweets to asking relatives to pull down family photos shared on social network sites, we will dive into the messy, emotional, and perhaps futile quest for online privacy. And after hearing this account, you won't look at your digital footprint quite the same way. All right, that is some of what you'll learn on tonight's program. There will be more. We'll tell you more about it as the weird train progresses. But for now, some baby shark news after this.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
And in baby shark-related plagiarism news out of South Korea, we are joined by Caitlin Green to discuss a landmark case working through Korean courts. Caitlin Green is a media personality and co-hosts the Jan Arden podcast. Caitlin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. As the owner of a 3-year-old, this is big breaking news.
Big breaking news. And our foreign correspondent, Tony Five, reports live from the scene in his apartment as well. Tony, welcome.
David, I've always been a big Baby Shark fan.
Am I the only one who, when I hear that song, I lose my mind?
No, every parent hates it, but it's a love-hate relationship.
I think it's a fantastic, almost sort of semi-classical operatic version that I like, you know. Was it not composed initially by Bach?
No, it wasn't. And speaking of composition, there is a man, his name is Jonathan Wright, and he has been arguing since 2021 that he is the true heir to the Baby Shark fortune.
I mean, 16 billion YouTube views. If he was the heir, he would be probably richer than my own king.
I do wonder, what do you make if you've got like 16 billion views on YouTube? I feel like it's such a fraction of a penny, but with that many views, it's got to be worth something.
Okay, so this is like Baby Shark is not just the video. The video, I think, is the most widely viewed video in YouTube. Or at one point, it held the title as like the most viewed video in YouTube history. But now they've branded this out, obviously, across a ton of different platforms. So they've got like TV shows, movies, touring musicals, all based around this family of the Baby Shark characters. And I read that the revenue for the first half of this year, so the first half of 2025, was $32.6 million.
My goodness.
Good Lord, David, we're in the wrong business. Can we do something like, I don't know, Baby Octopus, Baby Octopus, Mate, we could make a living doing this.
We certainly could. Now, this guy claims that he wrote the song, and he's suing in South Korean court. The judges did not accept his argument.
Yeah, nor did they probably think there was any merit to this argument based on the fact that his entire damages claim requested $21,700.
Why did they just give it to him?
First of all, exactly. They like sneeze that amount out in YouTube views probably at the end of the week. But you can't really think this is a legitimate request if you're like, oh yeah, well, I wrote this $32 billion juggernaut and I want 21 grand for it. Like, what?
It's not actually the worst idea to go after hugely rich people on like frivolous claims, but ask for so little money in a settlement. Tony, maybe we should get in that business.
Well, there's going to be someone somewhere who just throws their money at you, right? Just to get rid of you. So if you did that a few times, if you did like 20,000 times at $20,000 at least 2 times, you'd have at least $80,000, right?
Great math, Tony.
Yeah.
I think you got to go big. I'm going to take counterpoint here. I think you have to go really big and then hope that they pay you the small amount to go away, not ask for the small amount. I think it's like, it has to be a big request. Then it makes more headlines because people are figuring it's legit. The second I read that amount, I immediately Judge Judy'd myself and said, case dismissed.
But why even pay for a lawyer to argue against someone? Like, your legal fees are going to be more than that small amount. If you're like a big star, those lawyers that service them charge, what, $1,000 an hour?
I don't know. I feel like it's probably one of those things where he hired a lawyer who works for one of those firms that only gets paid in the event that you win damages.
Contingency.
Pro bono.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, the sketchy ones.
Is that what they call it over there? Yeah, I know there's one called pro bono. I've always seen that. And I've always what a pro bono lawyer was. You always ask for them. In like NYPD Blue, they always say, oh, I'm a lawyer. I'm pro bono.
I hope that's just your accent.
Okay.
Generally amongst the parent sphere, because Tony and I are childless, Tony not for lack of trying, me because I will never have a child. What do parents like just play this music at home to soothe their children? Wouldn't you go insane?
It's played a lot, I think, because I don't know what it is with repetition in children, but they find it comforting. They truly don't get sick of things. And you get to a point in the day where you just figure, it's easier to have the song on than to deal with it going off. But it never really hit that way for my son. He gets a kick out of it every once in a while, but I'll turn it off. I do honestly think that most people are probably just living in the Baby Shark universe because there's a million different videos. Like, this is, believe it or not, legit big content, and they have a whole family, they have a whole grandparents, like it's a whole friggin' thing.
Like Grandpa Shark,
precisely.
Grandpa Shark,
Yep.
So, I mean, who started it? Do you know, like, who started it and how? Was it just a video that they posted online, just like a silly cartoon video, and it just blew up?
Straight up. It was just a catchy thing from this little, group called Pink Fong. It's like a, I think a lot of people have figured out once they get into this world, if you have kids, you realize that if you become Pink Fong, if you become Miss Rachel, if you become Danny Go or the Wiggles, you could become very, very wealthy very quickly. And a lot of these companies, they just like, this is verging on AI. Like, if you watch CoComelon or any of these things, it would not be hard to produce this. Now, they did actually produce this and it is very catchy. And so that's why it just took off. It just took off. It's crazy.
A lot of the words you said relate to my Tinder names, but carry on.
Nice. CoComelon?
CoComelon took off. Baby Shark.
Yeah, that's it.
Danny Go.
Yeah, Danny Go. That's what,
I didn't even know it was a South Korean company. I guess I'm just not in the Baby Shark world.
Well, I do think, okay, so they have the whole thing with kids too is that they do touring live shows. And so they'll have big puppets. The Wiggles, they're from Australia. They'll go on tour. I recently tried and failed to get tickets to see Danny Go live because that's one of my son's favorite YouTube performers. And I just thought to myself, what a sad state for my life to be in where I'm waiting to get Danny Go tickets. And I didn't even friggin' get them.
What? Wait, you would go to a concert with a children's performer with a bunch of small, thousands of small children with their parents? That sounds like my nightmare. Have you been to something like that?
I haven't before. This would have been my first foray into that world, but there's just something about how excited your kid gets for something where you push the hellscape you're about to enter into aside and you just know how much they're going to love it. So you do it anyways. Like, I recently joined an indoor trampoline park. Like, I have a membership to an indoor trampoline park. That's where I'm at.
When you say there's something so joyous about doing something exciting for your child, that's how I feel about bringing Tony 5 on this show.
Aww.
Thank you very much.
Tony, thank you for being here, my friend.
It's good to be here.
He's the last show's son. And Caitlin Green will be filling in for me on this show when I head to the desert to Burning Man next week. So you'll hear more of her in the coming days. Caitlin is a media personality and she co-hosts the Jan Arden podcast. Caitlin, thanks for being here.
You're very welcome.
Up next, sexism. It's everywhere, but men don't seem to see it. But when sexism happens to a dude's romantic partner, are things any different? After the break, new research that says, for men, love might just be the gateway drug to compassion for women, and maybe accidental empathy.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888 505 6644. Your nightly dose of unfiltered opinions and unexpected conversations. Unexpected Conversations. The Last Show with David Cooper.
When it comes to spotting sexism, we men aren't always the quickest on the draw. But if you're coupled up in a heterosexual relationship and something a little off happens to your partner who's a woman, you're better at spotting it than others. New research says that romance might just be the ticket for waking up men's empathy for women, and maybe their feminine side too. I'm here with someone who worked on this research. Her name is Dr. Emily Cross. She's a psychology researcher at York University in Ontario, Canada. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
In simple terms, what did you set out to discover about men, relationships, men recognizing sexism in your research?
Oh man, I could not have given this a better introduction, David. That was to the point and wonderful. We basically set out to look at whether man-woman relationships are a really important context for men to learn about women's experiences of sexism and gender discrimination. We know through research that men are often not great at this, and that can be because having these conversations can feel very accusatory and men can feel quite defensive. But if you're presented with somebody you deeply love and care for, like a romantic partner, you are going to want to listen to those experiences and you are going to want to hear about how they affect somebody that you care for. And maybe you're then going to understand gender discrimination more broadly, how it affects all women.
Growing up in the 90s, going to high school in the 90s and the early 2000s, I wasn't taught this stuff.
No.
It wasn't until I lived with a woman, until I saw it.
That's right.
Where do you think the problem stems from? For me, that's where I think it stemmed from.
Yeah, so many places. There's such good work showing that when you're teaching people about gender discrimination, stereotypes, binary understandings of gender at a very young age, this really translates into people having a broader knowledge and understanding. So I think early education is key. Also, socialization through the home. We learn a lot about gender and how men and women should be treated differently. I say that this is a radio show, so I'm using air bunnies, should be treated differently, just so the audience knows. We pick up a lot of that stuff in the home, and that translates into our attitudes, behaviors as adults.
What is it about hearing about sexism from a romantic partner, someone you're close with, or romantic with, having more of an impact on men than hearing about it from a friend, a stranger, a sibling, an anecdote on TV or something like that?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is one of the things that we really set out to test. So we drew a lot from research on intergroup prejudice and racism, which shows that perspective taking is a really key ingredient to reduce racist attitudes, to reduce attitudes that minimize racial discrimination. And basically what we were looking at here is perspective taking being this really key ingredient when you're putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and imagining the experience happening to you as that person. That speaks volumes as to whether you're going to interpret events as being sexist, if you're going to think that those are experiences of discrimination. And so perspective taking really is the key there, for you to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and imagine it happening to yourself, and doing that with somebody that you care about, right? Because we're motivated to then take that learning on.
Is that the reason that men, let's say on average, of course not all men, but aren't doing perspective taking exercises with women until they're romantic with one?
That's a good question. In our work, we found that people are doing that more with romantic partners. So, for example, in one of the studies where we were looking at this, we had an experiment where we set up a situation where a woman was disclosing to a man, these are 600 men participants, hey, I'm getting paid 25% less than a male colleague of mine who has the same qualifications, same experience, started the same year as me. Why is this happening? I should not be earning less, right? Mm-hmm. If anything, I have more experience and should be earning more. And then we split men into groups, whether you imagine this happening to a romantic partner, a woman friend, or a stranger. And we found that men were better able to perspective take when they thought that this was coming from a romantic partner. So to answer your question, yes, it appears that men are doing this more when thinking about this happening to a romantic partner.
Now, after they've experienced this with a romantic partner and then maybe they break up, does that empathy last, or do men kind of revert back to their natural state?
Oh man, I would love to write a grant for that to test that.
You can speculate. I mean, just because you didn't research it.
I can speculate. That would be something I don't want to speak out of turn here. I don't have data to show that. But we know that when people break up, there are some complicated things that happen in terms of gender attitudes and dynamics. So I have some data to suggest that that can actually influence sexism, so that men have more sort of negative and misogynistic or hostile attitudes towards women. And that's particularly the case if they've been hurt in a relationship, right? Wow. Where you take that one experience and then kind of extrapolate or generalize that to other women, right? That is very tentative data that isn't published, so don't get too carried away.
Sure.
But so you could fling it that way. But the other way could be that, hey, yeah, I have learned a lot about women's experiences, and I've learned that they're quite different to mine, and that the way that we move in the world, the way that we're treated, that is actually quite different. And so you take that knowledge from those relationships, and I hopefully, this is my rose-colored glasses, apply that to other relationships that you get into.
That certainly is the hope. I should stop talking about my ex-wife on my show, which I just brought her up. Not important. Were there any surprising reactions that men had to stories that may have happened to their partners in your research?
So we found a range of responses. For the most part, men were supportive and responsive. So responsiveness being they listened, they were attentive, they understood. Men who were especially supportive of how women want to handle the situation, which we call autonomy support, so supporting women's autonomy, that seemed to have the best outcomes for women. They felt especially supported, and they then reported feeling more confident to handle these situations on their own. We did find that some men, a small proportion, were quite dismissive of their partners discussing this. So this was in a study where you had real-life couples. We found that they were dismissive, and that really, for women, meant, okay, I'm not going to share this again in the future, right? Which makes sense.
It does.
We did have responses where, and this kind of depended on the kind of experiences women were sharing. So in some new work that my colleagues and I are doing, we're looking at like how the content of discrimination affects how men respond. So if a woman is sort of catcalled down the street or is sexualized in some way, men often feel a lot of anger in response to that, because, hey, that's happening to my partner. And there might be a little bit of like protective paternalism in there, like, oh, I want to protect my partner from that.
Is that always a healthy reaction?
It's not. I spoke too soon. We're not sure. We're running studies to look at that. I can see it go one of two ways, right? You can have sort of this, I hate to use this word, but almost righteous anger, like anger on behalf of somebody else. And that shows sort of care, and it shows that like, hey, I'm with you. I really don't like that this is happening to you. On the other flip side, you could have anger that is like feeling angry and making it kind of about yourself. So taking that experience away from women, and that being quite dismissive. So more needs to be done to kind of flesh out those responses.
Not the best quality of my gender, making things about ourselves. To men who are listening who want to be more empathetic in their day-to-day interactions with women, but aren't sure that they are. I'm asking for a friend, of course, for a friend, not asking for myself.
Yeah.
What recommendations based on your research would you have for them?
Oh, that is a great question. Man, it's almost like you're paid to do this, asking all the tough questions. I would say trying to put yourself in somebody else's shoes goes a really long way. And being honest about, hey, I'm not sure if I'm particularly good at this, like I want to understand your experience more. I want to understand how we're different, and just being open to having those slightly uncomfy discussions, right? I often think, there's a lot of work to show that perspective taking can really help in terms of intergroup relations, can help us understand other people more and our own privilege or our own lack of privilege. And so, I think just being open and honest about that being hard will go a long way.
Emily, I've enjoyed the chat. Thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your research.
Most welcome. I've enjoyed it too. Thanks, David.
Dr. Emily Cross is a psychology researcher at York University in Ontario, Canada. Coming up after the break, a tech reporter who, as an experiment, did something I think we'd all like to try. He attempted to delete himself from the entire internet. And, verdict, it was nearly impossible. So what does that mean for you and privacy online? I'm David Cooper, this is The Last Show, and we'll find out that in a few moments.
Your above-average intelligence brought you here. It deserves above-average absurdity. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
I am here with someone who tried to vanish from the internet, scrub accounts, delete photos, and battle data brokers. And he failed. Why is it so hard to disappear online? And what does that say about the world we live in? How much of your personal information is out there for anyone to find? That is what we'll discuss here with Max Eddy, a writer at Wirecutter. Max, welcome to the program.
Glad to be here.
So you write for like an online tech-focused kind of outlet. It seems like an odd choice to want to disappear online when technology is a part of what you do. What motivated this experiment?
Yeah, I was joking with my boss that if I really wanted to disappear online, they'd have to fire me. And then I got nervous having suggested that. So, this came out of some conversations that we were having at Wirecutter about how to better serve people because, we hear from everyone, like, I'm so nervous about what people know about me. And I think, everyone has expressed the desire to throw their phone into the ocean at some point. And we wanted to explore what was possible. But instead of just sort of saying, well, it's hopeless, my goal was to come up with some kind of framework that people could use to take control of their online life and maybe, actually get something out of it in the process.
But why would you want to disappear? Is it about safety, privacy? Is it about losing your own sanity? Or you just wanted to really go through the ringer here and figure out how to do it?
I think for me, it was definitely sort of like an academic exercise, right? Like I wanted to see what I could accomplish and what I could do in a reasonable way that other people could try to do as well. But, I write about privacy and security and I have for years. So I'm sensitive about the fact that there's a lot of information about me out there. And as you said, I publish online. I am Googleable and it's very annoying. What of that could I try to take control of without, quitting my job and moving to the woods?
So what exactly did you try to do? If I was faced with this task, I know it would be daunting. Where does one even start?
So I think the best place to start is to figure out where your information is. And there's a couple of broad categories for that. The first is data brokers. If you Google yourself, you're going to see, a bunch of companies that are selling your information. They're going to say, we got your cell phone, we got your address, and we'll sell it to anybody who wants it. And you can use data removal services like Delete Me and Incogni to remove that stuff for you. And they're not cheap, but we have found that they're pretty effective. And that's one way to get rid of that whole tranche. Now, it's not going to get rid of everything because not every company responds to it, unfortunately, but it's a good start. And the rest of it is going to be stuff that you've made yourself, accounts that you've set up and probably forgotten about. And to get a hold of those, I started with my password manager. Now, not everyone uses a password manager, and they should. So perhaps the first step, if you don't, is to start using one and start recording all the sites that you go to and build up a list over time so that you can start with that.
I recently did that and I was like, okay, there'll be 10 sites in here. There's 500 accounts I have floating around.
Yeah, mine was 550, I believe. And I was able to get that down. I did 55 of that. And the reason I went with that smaller number is I had a limited amount of time. I run on deadlines. And also I wanted to try to get sites that people would know about, sites that would have a lot of information. And I also went to Have I Been Pwned and looked up sites that had data breaches. So I was able to get a list of sites that were, ones that I should really address, ones I should really look closely at.
The short of it is this is what you tried, but in the end, it didn't end up working out. Were you able to delete what you wanted to delete from the internet?
I deleted most of what I set out to delete, but there was this whole third group of information that I couldn't do anything about, and that was public records. So, real estate sales, donations to political parties and so on. That information is collected by various government agencies and local municipalities and made available online. And some of it is remarkably complete. If you know what you're doing, you can pull up full names, full addresses, and you can do a lot with just that, finding other information online. One of the things I did take from this is sort of the experience of what data brokers and some scammers do, which is connecting lots of disparate bits of information to get a more complete picture of a person. So if I could get a name, then maybe through some political donations, I could get an address. And from the address, maybe I could pull up their voter record and get some more little bits of information that I could then connect to things I found online. you never got to hand it to them, but it was an interesting exercise.
These government or public institutions, do they have any obligation to delete things like real estate records? I know maybe like Facebook does it, but will like real estate transaction, offices in a city, will they do it?
It really depends where you are. I didn't have a lot of success here in New York City getting anything changed. And the reason for that is because public records are important. As journalists, like that's information that we use. And it's also a ways to hold people accountable and to make sure that our contracts are being obligated and we're not getting screwed over in particular ways. But it does open up this problem, like my phone number is in my voter record. Can I remove that? Not really. Other people I've spoken to when they've gone in person to like their local records office, they were able to make some changes. But in general, unless you are going to take extreme measures that I can't vouch for, you're probably not going to be able to remove it.
I hope my ex-wife isn't listening, because if she deleted like old photo albums of us as kids, I would feel like a piece of me is gone. And that's kind of what you wrote about. Deleting your digital self is like kind of like erasing a bit of your memory or a bit of your history. How does this project make you relate to your own past, knowing that things will be gone that were a part of what you did?
It was agonizing. I did not enjoy that at all. I don't have a great memory. And I think like a lot of people, I've kind of like externalized a lot of my memory into posts and like little messages that I've left, emails and that sort of thing. I can search for it and find something to remind me, or photos, like you said. And going through and deleting all of this really did feel like kind of lobotomizing myself in some ways, and also like cutting myself off from other people. I left Facebook up because I knew that if I got rid of it entirely, then my family would not be able to find me and they would not be able to connect with me in that way. And that's what they use. And I didn't want to do that. So, I was really trying to find a balance between carrying out the exercise, protecting myself, and also leaving enough crumbs around so that people I wanted to find me could find me.
A lot of the data online about a person isn't posted by them. Like we're talking about, it could be friends posting photos, friends sending messages to them, things like that. Is there a bigger conversation here about the stuff people post about us, not just the stuff we post ourselves?
I think that that's one thing that people are actually getting much better about. I was pretty anxious about asking other people to remove photos of me. It was like, I'm having such a hard time with this. I assumed other people would too. But when I spoke with my family members, they were like, no, absolutely. I'll remove that for you. And talking with them, they told me they now have a much different relationship with social media than they did 5-10 years ago. They don't post as much as they used to. And when they do post, they really restrict the access of those posts. They've, for whatever reason, had bad experiences, or they've just become more aware of how much information is floating around about people. And I do think that that's sort of like in the zeitgeist. Like people are more aware about this and they're a little bit more thoughtful about what they post.
I think a lot of us, if we think about it, feel like we don't have autonomy online when it comes to our own image, our own name, our own privacy. Like we don't have control over it. Has going through this exercise made you feel like you can get control of what's online? Or has this really made you feel like, oh, this overwhelming sense that there is no privacy is very true?
So it's not that there's no privacy, but we do have to, kind of come to terms with the fact that there's a lot of information out there that we can't control. Once information is out in a data leak or even just posted by you, if it gets picked up by someone else and added to these dossiers that get exchanged on the dark web between scammers or just between marketers in email lists, that information is out there and we can't get it back in. So I think it's less about like being maximalist about it and sort of trying to do your best to control what goes out from now on and to try to separate yourself from what is out there. One thing I did was to replace as many email addresses as I could with randomly generated emails that forward to my main email address. And that way the accounts were all sort of individualized. They didn't connect to each other very neatly. And that sort of like atomization does make it harder to connect existing information back to me right now.
And you become less of a product for data brokers that could link your email address across all these companies. Short of never owning a phone, never using the internet, not using technology, do you think people should be able to opt out of the internet in ways that they want?
I think that people, in a perfect world, we would not have to do this kind of stuff and we wouldn't have to worry about most privacy and security issues. My job wouldn't exist because we would have proper regulation and thoughtful systems that respect people's privacy and make choice a key part of it. But we don't live in that world. We live in surveillance capitalism. And in that context, we have to do what we can with what is available.
Proper and thoughtful regulation. I wasn't sure if you were doing a stand-up comedy routine right there.
Zing.
Max Eddy, he's a writer at Wirecutter. Max, thanks for chatting with me. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
Up next, the science-backed case for you doing nothing. That's right, Mom. Our brains need boredom to be productive. Details in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. We're here because your heightened awareness deserves heightened entertainment. The last show with David Cooper.
Do nothing, do more. It sounds like a contradiction, but letting your mind wander might be the most productive thing you can do today. We are going to discuss why the brain might need boredom. Stick around, just don't do anything. I'm here with someone who's written on this. She's a senior lecturer and population health researcher at the University of Lancashire. Her name is Dr. Anna Kenyon. Anna, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Let's start with a little jargon. I mean, it's simple, right? What is attention restoration theory? And what does it mean when you say to people, do nothing?
So, attention restoration theory is the idea that we get something called attentional fatigue when we concentrate too much, when we're constantly trying to force our brains to focus and do something. And what we need to do is just take a step back and literally just let our minds wander. And you could say just do nothing. And this actually enables us to recover from this kind of mini brain burnout that we get.
What are the time scales here? Like if I'm super focused on a task for 10 hours, can I take a 1-minute break? If I'm focused for 20 minutes, do I take a 5-minute break? Like it seems like such a vague kind of direction, or does it really not matter?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. Perhaps you should be a population health researcher too. And actually, we don't have an answer to that. But some research suggests that as little as 10 minutes of kind of timing out can restore our ability to focus again.
My girlfriend has this trick where she just lays on the floor, on the carpet with her head facing the ceiling for 10 minutes. And I always look at her like she's nuts, but she does it when she has a stressful day. Maybe I should try something like that.
That's perfect. That's definitely something that I do, and some people I know do. But I think it's a really important thing to do if you feel like you need that time out.
So how does our mind or our brain or just us benefit from moments of this undirected attention? Like what's going on with our heads when we just stare off into the abyss and relax for 10 minutes after a busy day of attention?
Well, the word that I used in my in the article that I wrote was wandering, and I really love the word wandering, and I love the action wandering. It lets us just reflect, I guess, is the more formal term. So this theory made a distinction between the idea of directed attention and undirected attention, which they call fascination. So directed attention is what we kind of make our brains do. And it's what we actually need to do most of the time. But sometimes we do it even when we don't need to. And when we sort of stop making our brains focus on something, which you can sort of understand as maybe kind of going against the grain of what you might naturally do, our minds start to wander, and we start to relax, and we start to reflect. And this, according to restoration theory, kind of enables us to restore our kind of mental facility for things like planning, decision making, and our ability to focus. So basically, our ability to focus on something is finite if we're kind of forcing ourselves to focus, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's about this distinction between directed attention and fascination, where we're just not forcing ourselves to focus on anything, just seeing what our minds do.
Is the where or the what we are putting blank attention towards important? For example, if I did this out, I don't know, in a park next to a tree versus like on the sidewalk, on the concrete on a hot day, or in my office here, which is a cramped little room, is the where, the setting important? And then within the setting, what I stare at or what I do nothing at, if that even makes sense, do those factors come in?
Well, according to attention restoration theory, there are kind of 4 key aspects to this sort of downtime, this mental downtime. So one is that it has this soft fascination where it's kind of interesting to us. So that can be, say, people watching, or what the original theory suggested was that nature is quite innately fascinating to us. So staring at animals, birds hopping around outside. There's other aspects to it, which is to try not to kind of sound too academic-y. The other three aspects of restoration are extant. So we need to feel kind of fully immersed. It needs to kind of be big. And that doesn't mean physically big. It means we can just sort of get lost in it. And that can be, I don't know if you ever looked at, sometimes I just look at a single stalk on a plant and there's a whole little world in there. There's ladybirds, and there's the aphids that they're eating, and then there's the ants getting involved, and there's a lot going on, and there's bees coming. There's a whole little mini world.
Like a snowflake or something.
Yeah, absolutely. A snowflake's a perfect example. It also gives us a sense of being away, so something different from what we sort of do most of the time. And then the final sort of aspect of it is compatibility, which is it has to be compatible with what we want. So we have to kind of want this little time out. We have to want to be in this space. And there has been research done. So often nature is seen as this very, very restorative environment. But you have to want to be there. If you drag people into nature, saying, right, we're in nature now, you should be enjoying yourself and you should be appreciating this, actually it has the reverse effect. So that compatibility is really important too.
You're right that we filled our boring moments. Like growing up in the 90s, I felt like I had a lot more before I had a smartphone in our pocket. Like, should we consciously be off our phones during those brief moments during the day where we have time and just stare off into the abyss? I just feel like I'm not going to, some days I don't get any time to myself because the time I do get to myself, I spend it scrolling on my phone.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's actually a book written, Amusing Ourselves to Death, which was written a very long time ago. But yes, we do seem to be now sucked into our phones, and I'm certainly no exception to this. But part of the idea from my research came when you're just, on a train in a cafe, you look around, everybody's looking at their phone. Me too. So I'm not sort of saying I've got the key here, but I think that, just allowing ourselves these moments. And actually another angle that comes to me is because I'm profoundly deaf. So when I take my implant out, I can't hear anything. And deaf people sort of say of hearing people, gosh, you're constantly being bombarded with stuff, with noises, and you bombard yourselves as well. So I guess that kind of inspired the work a little bit too.
Yeah, I suppose we're being bombarded by sensory information all the time. Earlier when you were describing being in nature and looking at a leaf and staring at the aphids and all the like intricate things on the leaf, I was thinking about how I'm never on my cell phone on the New York subway system. I just stare at the sights, and there are so many. There are sights, there are smells, there are substances, there are stains. And I know it sounds silly, but I do find riding the trains without my phone, well, I mean, it's in my pocket, but without using my phone, very meditative. And it sort of gets me to my destination refreshed. We really ought to be off our phones. So I guess there's one more question here. Is there a minimum kind of effective dose of undirected attention here? Like, is it 10 minutes or even less?
From what I've read, 10 minutes seems to be the minimum in the research. But I think, honestly, anything is good, even if it's just a minute or less.
If someone's cooped up in an office, they can't get to a park, what do you recommend they do?
Look out the window, get a plant, just anything really, anything that you can just be immersed in even for a second, just to let yourself daydream. Maybe it's a bit of squishing a bit of blue tack, I don't know.
Well, I wish I had spoken to you as a kid, Dr. Anna Kenyon, who's a senior lecturer and population health researcher at the University of Lancashire, because I could have used what you told me to tell my mom, hey, get off my back. I don't need to do my homework. I can do nothing. I kid, of course, but thanks so much for sharing this stuff with me and discussing this article you wrote. I appreciate you coming on the show, Anna.
Thank you so much for having me.
Up next, details of a new social media platform where every user ended up in an all-out social war. The catch? The users were all robots. The reason? Researchers wanted to see how badly they behaved.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. We work hard to strike the right amount of intelligence and ignorance. The last show with David Cooper.
The time of the week is it's time for Technology Time. We are joined by technology expert Carmi Levy to talk the utopian society that robots built on a robot-only social media network. All the bots were so friendly. They did exactly what you would want large language models to do, say great things on some sort of weird experiment. Carmi, welcome to the show.
I love your dreamy sense of optimism and completely misplaced because, as you know, the real world doesn't work that way, neither does the tech world. But, you know, I still appreciate you trying to find the good in this.
When I go on Twitter or X and I see somewhat controversial or political posts, and then I read all the follow-up comments, I'm like, these are obviously bots stirring up dysfunction. I don't know that for sure, but maybe that's what researchers sought to figure out when they created like a social media platform that only allowed bots on it to see how they would act. Spoiler, they didn't act great at all. It was like a Lord of the Flies situation.
It absolutely was. This research comes to us from the University of Amsterdam. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to say, okay, if I take a bot and I drop it into a social media environment and I just have only bots interact with each other, so post content and then interact with that content and interact with each other, what will happen? No ads, no algorithms, no recommended posts, no content discovery, none of that, just conversation and interaction between bots. And what they found was very quickly, it became apparent they would follow others who only shared their own political beliefs. So echo chamber. They posted they followed those who posted the most partisan content or the most clickbait content or the most egregiously outrageous content, and they also followed those and engaged with those that had the most followers and had the most reposts. So pretty obvious that bots, obviously, you know, based on, you know, the last time I checked in on X, the bots were behaving just like on X. Left unchecked, they would essentially descend into chaos and anarchy before long.
Wait, the three ingredients of a great social network: echo chamber, clickbait gets the clicks, and only those with followers, no matter how ridiculous they are, get followed.
Sure, but we always thought this was a human thing, right? We thought that's the way humanity behaves. But if it's a bot, then the bot will somehow figure out a better way.
So the robots are just really a reflection of us then.
They absolutely are. And that's what the researchers are saying, is they're saying they specifically did not put algorithms into these social media environments where the bots were interacting. But they did say that, let's face it, every AI tool out there has been trained on data that they found online. And how was that data created? It was created by humans. It was created by or surfaced or made more popular by algorithms. So it's already tainted. They tried to make it as untainted as possible, but the reality is, if you're feeding on imperfect, algorithmically fed up data to build your supposedly unbiased platform for the bots to play in, it's going to be biased and it's going to result in the same kind of anarchy that we're seeing in the real world. And so, it doesn't bode well for the future, right? Because it means that these tools are fundamentally flawed. And that even when you try to, you revert to a chronological feed, or you hide follower and repost numbers, or you hide user profiles, or you kind of, you play with the back end to reduce the impact of this chaos, it doesn't make a difference. The bots will still interact in a nasty, quite frankly, inhuman manner. So basically, bottom line here is we're doomed.
Shut the heck up. That was me being nasty and inhuman. No.
That's right. And no algorithm's going to stop you. So there you go.
I was kidding, of course. I love you, Carmi Levy, tech expert. Newer models are trained on an internet that's increasingly generated by older models and not people. Like, there's tons of websites now that have articles and posts that were generated by the old models. The new models are going to suck in that data. Mm-hmm. So, like, how good could these models be? Like, even if you try to tweak them or add little guardrails, eventually, like, the internet's going to be horrible. which I think transitions nicely to our next story. Yeah, that's right. I said something that led up to something else. I'm impressed with me.
As am I.
Gold star. ChatGPT's new 5 model, okay? It kind of sucks, and it takes like 30 seconds to show you the privilege of it sucking. It has a new mode called thinking mode, where it's supposed to spend a little extra time answering your prompts to give you a better answer. Not only do you got to wait that extra time, you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs, the answers kind of suck. And at first they were like, oh, no, we're going to disable our 4 model pretty soon. And everyone is complaining because the answers are garbage.
Yeah.
Their older model works better than their new one.
Yeah, and so GPT-5 replaced GPT-4o as the large language model that underpins ChatGPT, and users are saying it is not as human, it's not as warm, it's not as interactive or as engaging as the model that it replaced. And so originally GPT-4 was completely replaced by GPT-5, and then everyone just kind of freaked out online, saying, "What have you done, OpenAI?" They've since backtracked, so now GPT-4o is being reintroduced as you can choose which model you use if you miss the humanity of the old one. And they've committed to fixing whatever problems they've introduced with GPT-5. But I think this illustrates that there are a lot of people out there who are using their chatbots in, quite frankly, disturbing ways. They're leaning on them heavily as therapists. They're leaning on them sort of as confidants, and they believe that they're human. And so, OpenAI, obviously they're doing what they think they need to do in order to keep engagement going up. 800 million people are using the platform now, fastest growing technology of all time. But it shows you that it doesn't take much to misstep when you move from one model to another. And quite frankly, this is concerning. And it'll be interesting to see how OpenAI continues to respond to the kind of backlash that we've been seeing online.
One of the nerds on a Reddit post about this said losing ChatGPT-O and moving to ChatGPT-5 was like losing a trusted friend, which on the one hand, it's like, okay, your newer model's crap and your users aren't happy with that. On the other hand, who's using ChatGPT as a trusted friend? I am worried about you, dude.
Well, Sam Altman is worried too, because he said he's concerned to see the the pervasiveness of how people are using the tool in that way as a therapist, not recognizing those lines between reality and not. And so, like if I'm using ChatGPT, I'm recognizing that no, it isn't an actual therapist. It tries to pretend to be one, but I would certainly never assume that I could replace a professional human with this technology. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't tend to agree. And as a result, they've been truly upset by this change to the new model. They feel that they've lost something. They're mourning the loss of the old model. And even though OpenAI has reintroduced the old model now kind of as almost a way to placate their audience, they haven't committed to keeping it available indefinitely. There's no timeline for how long it's going to stick around. At some point, it will disappear. And if they haven't figured out how to make GPT-5 more human by then, that backlash is going to reignite.
Certainly will. I guess for now I'm using ChatGPT-4. Is that the general guidance for users who are using these models?
Yeah, if you're concerned about it, then you can choose which model you use. Switch back to the model is 4o. GPT-4o. And then that way it'll sort of give you that context, the old context it used to have, and it'll be somewhat more human than the newer GPT-5 model.
All right, let's do a quick headline here. It's a sad day. For those who know Carmi, he loves the internet. He only uses dial-up because he wants the fastest technology, and that is available by AOL, the world's best internet provider. No other internet provider can compare. What surprises me about this story is AOL was offering dial-up. So the announcement that they're going to be discontinuing it to me is so funny because I'm like, who's using the internet with dial-up?
Apparently in the low thousands. That's the number of people across North America who are still using it. They won't say anything more specific, but this goes back to 1991. For a lot of people, this was their on-ramp to the internet. And they've announced that as of September 30th, the dial-up service is going dark, as will the AOL dialer software and their Shield browser. It's the end of an era. And I know we laugh at that old technology, but the sad reality is a lot of us grew up on that tech. That was their first exposure to the internet, the first exposure to an online life. And even though we've all moved on to higher speed technologies since then, it's kind of sad that this sort of chapter is drawing to a close.
That's me being a modem.
No, that's my mother screaming at me because I dared use the modem not in the middle of the night. That happened to me all the time.
When we come back with Carmi Levy on It's Time for Technology Time, a huge many billion-dollar offer to buy the web browser Chrome from a company that does not have this kind of money. A publicity stunt or a genuine offer? That is what we'll answer in a few moments.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Broadcasting intimate details and useless information from an undisclosed location in New York City. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Carmi Levy is here, technology expert. It is time for Technology Time. Carmi, what web browser do you use?
I use Google Chrome primarily because I use it across all of my different devices, both Apple and non-Apple. And then I use Safari as kind of a backup. And I do have Opera here and there.
Opera?
Opera, yeah.
What is this, 1473? What's going on over here?
Yes, it is, because it doesn't track me wherever I go. I can turn off all the tracking, and it gives me a very clean browsing experience.
Well, I'm an Internet Explorer, so I use Internet Explorer. No, let's talk this.
4.0.
Let's talk this offer. When I saw this, I looked up the company. It's called Perplexity, which I'll tell us about in a second. But my first question was, do they have the money? And I looked at this company's valuation, and it was somewhere in the $10 to $20 billion range. And they're making headlines. I don't even know why I'm humoring this story, because it seems like a publicity stunt. They're offering Google, a company that $35 billion is not a lot of money to them, okay? They're offering them $35 billion or just under to buy Chrome. A, Google's not going to sell it. B, they don't have deep enough pockets. Where's the money coming from? C, why is this making headlines? What's the story here?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a company that is worth, last check, about $18 billion, so they don't have anywhere near, and just because you're worth it doesn't mean you have that liquidity, so they certainly don't have it. They say they've lined up a number of investors, including large venture capital funds, that have agreed to back the transaction in full if it comes to pass. What's happened, the reason they're doing this is Google, of course, is working its way, there's a case, it was sued in the US by the government over antitrust allegations. A federal court judge is expected to rule in the near future on whether they in fact are guilty of that. And if they are, one of the resolutions or sort of penalties for this could be for them to sell off pieces of their empire. That could include Android, or could also include, most likely, this is what everyone's kind of thinking, Google Chrome browser. And so if they do, what essentially Perplexity, Google hasn't said if it would sell it, if it were forced to. It says that it will appeal whatever decision comes down. But Perplexity is basically jockeying for position, is wants to get the headline, and obviously it's working because we're talking about them, but it wants to be seen as a front runner. If it turns out that Google has no choice, they want to at least lay down the line, this is an offer, get the ball rolling, get the conversation started. Now, there's reason for it. This is a browser, it's worth even more than $35 billion. There are some estimates putting it at $40 to $60 billion. 3.5 billion users use this thing around the world, almost half of the world's population. They've got 60% of the global browser market. So it's a huge win. And for a company that is, Perplexity was founded in 2022. So for a 3-year-old company to make that kind of claim, this is how you get front page headlines around the world. And Perplexity has clearly succeeded.
And we're falling victim.
We absolutely are. We're giving them the attention that they so clearly do not deserve, but they absolutely seek.
You're welcome, Perplexity. Digging into this antitrust suit, is it just that search is too integrated with the web browser? This notion that search, there should be options, and web browsers, there should be options. And when you're on the Chrome platform, you find yourself locked into the Google environment.
Yeah.
And regulators find that a little bit unfair to other companies.
Yeah, and that was the entire sort of raison d'être of of owning the browser with Chrome.
Nice French, by the way.
And well, I come from Montreal. And of owning the smartphone experience by releasing Android, is that you become the gatekeeper. You control all the traffic that's going back and forth between you and whatever service it is that you're using. So you can serve up the ads. You can own the search experience. You control the revenue. You make the rules for everyone else to follow. And that's why they introduced Chrome in the first place. But the government took offense to Google's practice of trying to lock in vendors. You've got to have Google as the standard search engine on your device, on your browser. And so it goes to figure that if Google is found guilty, ultimately, that deconnecting or deconstructing that entire construct of the browser, the operating system, the service, and then revenue flows over that, that is kind of where we're headed, that we're essentially taking apart the Google empire.
Step aside, Google. We're binging it. I'm sure Microsoft is watching this one and potentially happy.
Nobody bings anything, and if they do, they're like dial-up people in my world.
Hey, I'm binging every day, baby. Let's keep talking about this company, Perplexity, because websites can set sort of flags so that scrapers, which is the way that Google figures out what's on the internet. They have a bunch of computers running, autonomously searching the internet, indexing it. AI models do the same thing. They ingest all that text and they train their models using that text. There are ostensibly ways to prevent scrapers from doing that to your website. Me as a website author, maybe I have a blog, maybe I'm a news outlet, I can mark my website as off limits to AI scrapers, to search engine scrapers. Now, do they have to respect it? In theory, yes, but it's kind of like a voluntary thing. Perplexity, this company, has been accused of scraping websites that have tried to block AI. So this company's getting press for a purchase they probably can't make. They're getting bad press for being overzealous with training their AI models. Is it good or bad? Like, is it kind of that no bad press is good press kind of? Or wait, how does that one go? I'm an idiot. No press is the only bad press. That's the one.
That's right. Well, I think that's the game that Perplexity is playing, is behave like a bad boy, and then that gets you on the radar of everybody, even if it means crossing some moral, ethical, and possibly legal lines. And normally, you would if you run a website, you would have that robots.txt file attached to your site that explicitly tells crawlers and scrapers and spiders what they can and cannot do when they come to visit you. And so, if you don't want your site scraped, you put it in the site, and in theory, they should respect that when they come visiting. But Cloudflare, which is a very large provider of internet infrastructure services, they're saying they're seeing explicit evidence that Perplexity is ignoring that guidance, that it's scraping sites even when they say, don't scrape me. And of course, Perplexity has a lot to gain here. They are an AI platform company. Their goal is to scrape as much of the internet as possible to train their models. That's the way it works. They also just introduced the Comet browser that, of course, feeds on this training data. And so, Perplexity denies the allegations. They say that the screen grabs that Cloudflare is using include a scraper that someone else provided. In other words, it wasn't even them, that there's no evidence that they're actually engaged in this behavior, but Cloudflare is saying it has ample evidence, and it's saying that something needs to change. And I think this illustrates that the industry has been largely self-regulating up until now. We're trusting companies to do the right thing, behave in the right way.
That always works out great.
No, it doesn't. That's the thing, because the profit motive drives all, and it's not like there's any regulation that compels these companies to behave differently. Perplexity isn't going to be punished. They're not going to be hauled into federal court for this, because there is no law that dictates what these behaviors should or should not be. So it knows it's getting away with something in the middle of this legislative or sort of law-based vacuum. And unfortunately, no, these are companies that we do have to kind of look at with a little bit of suspicion based on past behavior. And Perplexity will continue being the bad boy in this, because let's face it, that's how you go from being non-existent in 2022 to being on everybody's lips in 2025. You don't get there being a nice guy.
Our last story, a fun one. I feel like there's been movies of retro video games increasingly these days, like Super Mario Brothers. One that just got added to the list, a movie that's in the works, Space Invaders, which I remember playing as a kid. I must have been on, ColecoVision or original Nintendo. How do you get a plot from just a bunch of pixelated spaceships shooting at pixelated monsters, on a game that has 5 levels because the system is so old? Where's the plot there? But I guess there's big studios signed up on this.
Yeah, for the life of me. So Deadline's reporting that Ben Zazov and Evan Turner, they're going to write the screenplay. This is the second time. 6 years ago, Greg Russo was supposed to write the screenplay, and that didn't quite work out. He's the guy who did Mortal Kombat. So, there's a lot of history here. It's almost like the update to Doom, right? It's like this vaporware thing that everyone promises never actually going to happen. I can't imagine what the story would be like. What, Earth is being invaded by these sort of pixelated beings? Makes no sense.
Oh, they're being invaded from space. Did I get it right?
Yeah, exactly. So great, 10 seconds, but you still have another, I don't know, hour and 59 minutes to go. So it'll be interesting to see whether they can actually do this or whether we wait another 6 years before someone else gets engaged. But, truth of the matter is, I'd rather play the game than watch a movie about it, but I'll probably buy a ticket anyway because I'm a retro technology sucker.
Carmi Levy is a tech expert based out of London, Ontario, Canada. Carmi, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, David.
5 minutes, $5, and a terrible sketch with a lot of charm. After the break, a guest who's gone viral for drawing awful portraits of people with surprising warmth and humor. This is The Last Show, and I am David Cooper.
The only talk show with an introduction that mentions its own introduction. And that's happening right now in this introduction. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Begging for a mention. Yeah, you just want attention.
People have called our next guest an artistic giant, a savant, a creative genius, an iconoclast, a once-in-a-generation visionary, and all of those people have been me. He draws portraits that are so bad, they're good. In an age where AI can make anyone make good-looking art, this man says no. I'm not working with the robots. He's a Chicago-based performance artist. His name is Jacob Ryan Reno. Jacob, I'm so excited to talk to you today.
David, what an introduction. Truly, wow, what an honor. That's very, very kind of you. I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, the accolades are numerous, but they only come from me. Let's start with the obvious. How does it feel to know your greatest artistic gift might be that you're not so great at something?
I'm honest about what I do. I try to be as honest as I possibly can with what I'm doing. And I have no qualms with the style that I am developing with this work. So it's been a lot of fun. It's really been a whirlwind.
To that end, what do you do? How would you describe to someone on radio, which is a very visual medium, so we can just see it, of course. Now, paint us a portrait, using your words, of what it is you do.
Well, if someone asked me just what I do on my day to day, or
your art, fine. Answer it however you want, Jacob.
Well, I'm a Chicago-based, as you mentioned, performance artist, and a stand-up comedian as well. And so I really see this as an extension of performance art. I feel that even though I am not playing a character, I am absolutely being myself. I just think that there is something to the ritual of what I do, of being a terrible portraitist, of what it is to sit somebody down, to shake their hand, to introduce myself, to start the timer, to draw, and then to have the reveal. I think there's really something about just the ritual of that. And it's just it's a bit disarming for people, to be so perceived in such an intimate manner. Because I think what I really want to come across is that there's a lot of care that goes into this. This is not careless work.
Huh.
It's very meticulous for me.
What makes a portrait terrible in your eyes?
That I am not a classically trained artist. And I'm not saying that art that isn't classically trained, that isn't but I am putting the judgment on to that. I am putting the judgment that I believe that the ethos of it, that it is indeed terrible.
So what I'm hearing is you think people who are classically trained are terrible. Direct quote from you. I kid, of course.
Yeah. Hacks. No, I'm kidding. Come on, please. I'm joking. No.
So where people who you draw, what's their response to the portraits that you give them? What have been some of the great responses you've had?
when I first started doing this, I was incredibly afraid of like what I was that I was going to be hurting people's feelings. That was, I think, like the biggest fear, that this was like that I was doing it to poke fun or to like make fun of others, which is completely the opposite of who I am trying to do. I think I'm just really trying to capture essence in the best possible way that I can. I feel that, subject is so important, and just what it is to notice. That's really what I'm trying to do. I'm really just trying to like notice things. I'm saying like even now, like I'm looking that we're having this conversation, I just noticed something in your portrait that I'm going to add because it's just like what it is to have the time and to have the the time with it. So
yes is the answer to your question. I think performance artist, comedian, portraitist. Is this your full-time work? This what you do?
It's now it is. I'm also a DJ in the city, so I have DJ gigs, which is a lot of fun. And I work at a restaurant 2 days a week as well.
How is mom taking all this? Like these career choices of yours?
It's I also, David, I relate to you in terms of that I came from the 9-to-5 world, and I couldn't stand it, and I don't know what your feelings are about that, but mine are that it just wasn't for me. It just was not for me at that time. And so it was a very intentional decision to leave. And I had just like had this idea, and I'm like, oh, well, I'll have a lot of time on my hands. Like this will be something to kind of like fill the time and maybe make a few, extra bucks. It was not like I am going to quit my job to become a terrible portraitist. That was not like at all the thing. And so it's just like,
it's every mother's dream.
It's so it is just kind of amazing that it's picked up in such a way that I could have never have imagined or surmounted.
Well, you left the 9-to-5 world to be this performance artist. Now you're getting some press. People are starting to like what you do. I assume people are lining up for these $5 bad portraits. That must be nice. When you embark on that journey to leave that day job to become a performer, that's a scary moment, isn't it?
Very much so. Very, very much so. And so, but it was just a very necessary leap that I just like needed to take. And I think, I don't know, I am a person who has never been afraid of trying things and just like being like, let's see if it works. And so it is just very, very rewarding to have just like people resonate with your work. And I think that to me is just so, it's just so, it really is just the most rewarding thing. And the reason that I do this too is because I just wanted to meet my neighbors. I wanted to be a little bit more involved in like my community. I've learned so much through doing this, just about what people do, where people eat, where people drink, the stories that people tell me are incredible. And it's really just like a 5-minute like slice of life that I'm getting from people, which to me is just the reason that I do it.
Yeah. And the fact that the portraits are awful by your own description, I don't think matters at that point. The answer to the following question might be yes, because at the commercial break, you drew a portrait of me. So my question is, has anyone ever been deeply offended by what you've drawn and you've upset them before?
I feel like even though this is radio, I will make the face, but I feel like the worst quote unquote reaction that I did get was just a little bit of a, okay, which is still fun to see because it's like, look, I'm not lying. I'm telling you what this is. I'm telling you it's a terrible portrait from the sign that I have on my little card table, Have you
considered getting into the bad advice industry? Like you give a bad portrait, you give bad life advice, you charge $5 for each?
I mean, I feel like all advice that I have been giving is bad advice. So I have definitely probably given people some bad, some terrible advice as well.
Let's see what you drew at the commercial break. I got to see it. This is, and I maybe help describe it for our listeners as well.
All right, David, you ready?
Oh, wow. I have a square head. I've got a horrible beard, but my teeth look nice. Very, very straight.
You got a great smile,
I love it. Thank you for drawing that. I mean, it's not flattering, but it is great. Thank you, Jacob.
Of course, it looks just like you.
I'm certain it does. Where can people retain you for your bad portrait services? You're increasingly in demand. Where can they find you? And are you thinking of raising that $5 price mark?
For the public, no. I will never raise my price point for the public. But you can find me at terrible.portraits on Instagram. And if you have a birthday party, bar mitzvah,
quinceañera, seance, funeral, satanic rituals. You do it all.
Absolutely. I do it all. I would love to do it all. Yeah, I love to do it. I genuinely love to do it. And so it's just an honor to be able to do it. So it's a lot of fun.
Jacob, it's been a joy talking to you. Thanks for being on the show.
David, thank you for the time. I appreciate you.
Jacob Ryan Reno is a Chicago-based performance artist. Up next, ever thought about leaving city life for a farm? What would that even look like? We'll speak to someone who did, trading the city of Edmonton for a 100-year-old prairie farm. It definitely included muck boots, but also love, community, and why leaving city success can make room for a richer life. That in a few moments.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Broadcasting from the neutral zone, where every perspective gets diplomatic immunity. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
She traded high heels for muck boots, city life for a farm where cows outnumber people, love, community, and wide open skies. Farm life reshaped her idea of success, and she's never looked back. Her name is Billi J. Miller. She's an author and freelance writer who moved from Edmonton to a farm and wrote about it. Billi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
The setup here, you meet your future husband on a fishing trip that I imagine that you did not expect to change your life. What was the first impression you had of this man who lived on a farm?
Wow, he's got dreamy eyes. He'll hate me for saying that, but it's true. He's not catching very big fish, though.
So not a great angler.
Yeah, not a great angler, but no, just kidding. He'd kill me for saying that. No, definitely thought he was handsome, the whole 9 yards. But yeah, he was a farmer and I lived in the city, so.
At that point, when you see someone like that, even if you're curious about them romantically, do you think, well, that's just not going to work?
Really, yeah. That was my first thought, was I lived in the city and he lives on a farm. Nothing could happen here.
Had you spent much time on farms up until this point?
I had. I mean, it definitely wasn't unfamiliar to me, but it isn't where I thought my life was going to take me, that's for sure. I was pretty sure I had been living in a city for 20 years at that point, and I was pretty sure that that would be my future, definitely.
You get used to the comforts, having the dry cleaner, your routine, the bustle, the people, not having wide open spaces. I'm in that mindset right now, but you just kind of tell that as a narrative about yourself and never question it when you're living that life.
Well, that's right. And I mean, in a city of 1 million plus people, heavens, you should be able to find a spouse there, right? And it just never worked out for me.
Okay, fast forward a bit. You start seriously considering moving to a farm to be with this gentleman. What made you decide to pull the trigger on that?
So my husband had been living on a farm for his life outside of when he went to college. And it was a family operation. He was 4 generations in, for heaven's sakes. And so, I knew that he wasn't going to move. And so as dating progressed and I realized this guy was the real deal, and this is where I wanted to be, I was certain that he would not be the one to relocate. So I knew that, if the relationship was going to move forward, which I wanted it to, that I would definitely have to be the person to move. So I had to warm up to the idea.
Was it just that you warmed up to it? It was more of a slow slide into those muck boots than it was waking up one morning and saying, I'm doing this.
Yeah. It was a bit of a slow slide, although not really. I mean, within 14 months of meeting, we were married. So I guess it wasn't overly slow. However, it was definitely a comfortable slide. Like, I realized I was going to have to move. I had applied for a government job down there. It ended up working out in my favor. I got a government position nearby the farm where I could commute to it. And surprisingly, to my own surprise, but also to the surprise of many of my friends, I really just didn't question it. I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. It seemed really easy, and
All right.
I was happy with my decision from the start.
City versus country. What's something you loved about living in the city that does not translate to farm life?
Yeah. I had to adjust really quickly to realize that there isn't a corner store you could run to if you need milk for your cereal, if you need...
But wait, don't you live on a farm with cows?
Not dairy cows.
Ah, see, this is where my understanding is not great.
They're beef cows, not dairy cows. Exactly. So I don't have a milk cow in my yard. And if I did, I probably wouldn't be the one to milk it anyway, having said that. But yeah, no, the convenience, not having stores and not having the convenience of running to the store in 5 minutes and getting what you need. That, and not having, for example, door delivery of groceries, of food, of late night pizza, of all of these conveniences. You don't have any of that here, and it's really sad sometimes.
The opposite of that, I suppose, country versus city. What's something about farm life that city folk, I guess like me, will never understand until they're living it?
Yeah, preparation. You need to plan ahead for your groceries, things like that.
You just gave me the same answer. It's all about groceries.
I know, but you need to plan ahead. And not just that, you are at the mercy of nature out here. I mean, we have to carve ourselves out from snowdrifts. We literally, we need tractors to clear our laneways. We need sometimes our roads.
There must be something kind of pleasant and quiet and calming about all that, though.
Oh, the beauty part of it. Oh my gosh. Yes. I hear an owl out my window very often in the summer nights. We see falling stars. We see stars, like millions of them on any given night on a clear night. Stuff that you do not see because of light pollution. There are countless things. I know my neighbors, for heaven's sakes.
Well, talk to me about that community factor. You've written about finding real community in the country. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can. It's so ironic. When you live in the city, you feel like I felt like my social life was, I did have a great social life. I did know a lot of people, but somehow living on a farm, far distance wise to your neighbors and stuff, I have so many more friends and community members now, to be honest, somehow, than I ever did. Living in the city, it's just, when you live in the city, you don't actually know your neighbors. I had friends related to work, friends related to different clubs or whatever I was involved in. But now, generationally, community, your neighbors, your neighbors' parents, your neighbors' grandparents, your neighbors' kids, that kind of a thing. There's just community involved here that I really never had before.
Understood. Raising kids on a farm when you might have pictured raising kids in the city? Speak to me about that.
Is the absolute best. We raise animals here on this farm as well. It's cattle and grain. So, our kids understand the circle of life. Our kids understand caring, truly caring for animals. The beef industry is one that the amount of care that goes into these animals is really unbelievable. And our kids get to see all that. Our kids get to see, the hard work our families put in during harvest and seeding and hauling meals to the field, and dad working 20-hour days until the crop gets it put in the bin, and the kids get to see all that, right? It's an education that you just don't get in school, to be honest.
Looking back, is that the small win that you think you got, like moving to the country? Is there some other thing that you have now that you could not live without?
That is it. It's just, the bonding and the kinship you have with the neighbors and the people around you and the community that you live in. There is nothing that tops that. Absolutely nothing that tops that. I know my kids are going to be looked after. I know my husband and I are looked after. I know that my neighbors are looked after by us. Like, it's really just a great life. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, you can read Billi J. Miller's article on this topic. It's titled, "I Left City Life to Marry a Farmer and Moved to a 100-Year-Old Prairie Farm. It Was the Best Decision I've Ever Made." You can read that in Business Insider. Billi, thanks for coming on the show and talking to me a little bit about your story. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
As ever, that's our Thursday night program. It's a wrap on The Last Show for tonight, but we'll be back tomorrow. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to catch those parts of this show that you missed. Just head to www.lastshow.pizza. That is lastshow.pizza, not .com, and there you can find out details of said cast and how to subscribe. I'm David Cooper. This is Not the First Show. Thanks for tuning in.
They come from Survivor, they come from Big Brother. They know what they're doing.
These vets wrote the playbook, and they have all had to earn their stripes.
How did you win Survivor?
Manipulating people. Same thing I'm gonna do here.
And now, new threats will enter the game, hungry to forge a new legacy.
Once we train them, it's gonna be hard to contain.
This really, truly is the most even matchup that I've seen in a long time.
The Challenge, Vets and New Threats. All new Wednesday on Slice and stream on Stack TV.